Now, as you guys know, I'm going to reiterate this for maybe the new people in the room. I've never been a big fan of Nick Wright. I think it's important that I say this. I have never been a fan of Nick Wright. I knew that I never needed to take Nick Wright seriously when I heard Nick Wright say on television back in 2016 that LeBron James became the greatest player of all time in 2016 after he came back from that 3-1 deficit and officially eclipsed Michael Jordan. I already knew I was in trouble with Nick when I heard Nick Wright. Nick Wright was the first person that I ever heard on television say that Kobe Bryant was never the best player in the world. Prior to Nick Wright saying that, I had literally never heard anyone say that. And what Nick did was he built this following. He basically built the following by essentially grifting, right? Saying things that some LeBron fans wanted to hear. And then somehow he landed a job on television on one of these prominent shows. And he was able to pretty much go out there and push an agenda. Now, some of you guys may be saying, but what are you talking about pushing an agenda? How do you know Nick Wright is pushing an agenda? Well, I think, listen, the vast majority of us out here have always thought that Nick Wright has some type of affiliation with LeBron James's camp. For some of you guys, well, LeBron James, how can Nick Wright be affiliated with LeBron James? Well, LeBron James' best friend, or one of his best friends, is Rich Paul. Rich Paul, who owns the sports agency Clutch Sports, right? So that's the connection. Now, some of you wonder, but what about Nick Wright? How's Nick? A lot of us have always speculated that Nick Wright was somehow connected to LeBron's camp, right? Because whenever you listen to some of his takes, you were just like, but these are outlandish, absurd takes. So what happened? Earlier this week, about a day or so ago, I was listening to a segment from Doug Gottlieb. Doug Gottlieb, a lot of people got on my case. You don't know how to pronounce Doug Gottlieb's name. Was I there when they were naming Doug Gottlieb? No. So sometimes I get it right, sometimes I get it wrong. Doug Gottlieb, if I mispronounce your name, I'm sorry, right? Doug Gottlieb, I hope I got his name right. But anyway, that's a wrinkle. That's not the point of this show here, the pronunciation of Doug Gottlieb's name. Anyway, I was listening to a segment from him, and in this segment, he was essentially pushing back on Nick Wright. And to be fair to Doug, he's the only person I've seen at FS1 to actually push back on some of his own contemporaries. He did the same thing with Skip Bayless, basically by calling Skip Bayless obnoxious. And now he did it with Nick Wright. So as he was talking about Nick Wright's outlandish Michael Jordan take, in the process of that, he then revealed, haphazardly or in passing, that Nick Wright is represented by Clutch Sports. So for those of you who actually never heard that audio, what we want to do is we want to play it for you now, and then we're going to come back and continue with the show. Take a listen to that.
Here's how I operate. I will, and we have, What Does the Fox Say? That's on our In the Bonus podcast, which you can download. It goes live right at 5 on the East Coast, 2 on the West Coast. And we play for you a portion of a previous show on Fox Sports Radio or Fox Sports 1, and then we talk about it. But I couldn't let this one go. Nick Wright is Team LeBron, right? Like if LeBron actually needed a media cheerleader, he would have a skirt and pom-poms. And he's made no secret about it. He believes he's the greatest athlete he has ever seen. And Nick's 38 years old, so he wasn't really old enough to truly feel and understand the gravity of the Jordan era. It's all from spoken word and videos and reading. He's a really bright guy, and he's on First Things First, which I think airs right about now on Fox Sports 1. Matter of fact, he's actually repped by Clutch Sports. So he's almost like he can do damage control. And it's not like I think LeBron picks up the phone and says, hey, got my back. But any possible chance of pointing out something negative about Jordan or positive about LeBron, he takes advantage. So I don't know if you guys have seen, there's this internet story that Jordan is selling the team because he shorted the GameStop stock to the tune of $500 million. And this is his way of paying back the guy who's actually going to own the Hornets. And they're overpaying really for the team, kind of as a make good. But Michael Jordan he's still making the draft, but he still has last word in the draft selection. And for now, he's still the owner of the Hornets, but eventually that'll go through and he will pocket $2 billion. This is what Nick Wright said about what he calls the failed ownership of the Charlotte Hornets and how it should reflect on Michael Jordan's resume.
So Michael Jordan sold the Hornets, made a fortune. Michael's been very good at business, from his shoe deals. You know, I know you're I can see.
Oh, yeah. Listen, Colin, a lot of, it was very unique that, someone bought a pro sports team 20 years ago and made a profit. I mean, I read stories left and right. Yeah, I mean, the guy sold the Arizona Cardinals. He's now on unemployment. Another guy, I mean, it's financially ruinous for many people, but a brilliant businessman like Jordan can make a profit from selling a pro sports team. But go ahead. I interrupted. I'm sorry.
It's a very good point. How, I mean, Michael, baseball didn't work. The Wizards didn't work. The GM thing didn't work. He's great at basketball, great at selling shoes, and those are qualities. I mean, there's a lot about Michael I like. How do you view him now as the Charlotte GM owner mess? Does it ding the legacy to you?
Okay, so I would like to do a couple things. One is this. Everyone must acknowledge, if they are being honest, that when Jordan took over the Hornets 15 years ago, he turned them into a dynasty, people would use it as evidence of his greatness. Can we all at least agree to that?
Yes.
That if they were awesome, they'd be like, oh, look at him, Jay. Everything he touches turns to gold. Instead, his ownership tenure of the Hornets was identical to his playing tenure when Scottie Pippen wasn't his teammate. 0 postseason series victories. He won 3 games, at least, as a Hornets GM and owner in the playoffs, as opposed to only 1 as a player. But here's my problem. If we would like to judge the greatest player ever purely by, we will evaluate from the day you first set foot on a court to the day you leave the NBA, I'm good with that. But that's never been what it's been for Michael. Michael's had, in some way, because of all the acolytes and sycophants, the best of all worlds. Cool.
So you get the point, okay? You get the point. He wants to use the whole picture to talk about Jordan and who, in fact, is the greatest. I'm going to do something now which should have been done a long time ago. I'm going to tell people that anyone who uses the Scottie Pippen joining him and that Jordan didn't win anything with Scottie Pippen is the dumbest, least connected to reality moment that there is. And I'm going to say it without diminishing how great Scottie became. Because if you were actually alive, which Nick Wright was not, nor was he of age to understand basketball. And full disclosure, I'm 9 years older than Nick Wright. And I'm not even going to point out I'm not doing the I played and my dad played and coached and my brother, not even, don't even need all of that. The reality of it is that the transformation of Scottie Pippen's image and how he played is very similar to Pau Gasol with the Lakers.
So you heard what he had to say. You heard what he had to say. Nick Wright, in fact, is literally represented by Clutch Sports. This is the guy that goes out there every single day that tries to find silly, outlandish ways to trash Michael Jordan. He trashed Kobe Bryant for years, all in an effort to prop up LeBron James. That was Nick Wright's primary objective. A lot of us out here were looking at this guy like, why is he going so hard at Kobe? What did Kobe ever do to Nick Wright? What did Kobe ever do to Nick Wright for him to be talking about Kobe Bryant this way? Nevertheless, that's what he did. He would constantly go at Kobe. The latest one was some of the most, think about this. Imagine you invest your money and over a period of years, you 10x your money. Then somebody comes and says to you, I hope you know that you're a failure. But you would look at the guy like, man, this is patently absurd. How am I a failure? I just 10x my money. He said, well, you didn't do well in this endeavor. You were supposed to be the best, the next greatest, business owner. You didn't do well. He's like, yeah, but I was a very successful magician in my former career. He's like, well, because you were terrible at this particular business, that means that it must work against your legacy as a great musician. And then somebody in the back stood up and said, what kind of stupidity is this? Essentially, that's what Nick Wright was doing. Nick Wright was saying that because Michael Jordan wasn't able to win any championships, or I don't know what he considers success with the Charlotte Hornets, therefore it should be some type of stain on his legacy as a basketball player. This is the caliber of person we're dealing with on television every day. I mean, his takes were so outlandish, and it left a lot of us scratching our heads. And the moment that I found out that he's now represented by Clutch Sports, it all makes sense. Some people say, but what's the issue? The issue is called conflict of interest. That's the issue. How can we take anything serious out of your mouth as it pertains to LeBron when you're represented by the talent agency that is directly connected to him? Why would we take you seriously? You're basically a lapdog. You go out there, you push agendas, you do it with a straight face, you have a suit, you have a big beard, you use large words. So therefore what? What you're doing is what? What, ethical? So the question then becomes, Nick, do you really believe what you're saying? Do you really believe what you're saying? Now somebody say, but what would make you say that? Well, I'll tell you what makes you say what would make one say that. A few years prior, we unearthed a tweet of Nick Wright taking shots at who? LeBron James himself. And now this is the guy you're championing every single day, bro. So to me, listen, I never took Nick Wright seriously. This was just added evidence that I never need to take Nick Wright seriously. I never need to take any of his points seriously. I think that a lot of his basketball takes are just flat out wacky, outlandish. And the moment, I mean, think about it. I believe it was in 2012 or as a matter of fact, I don't even need to sit up here and guess. What we're going to do is we're going to play a clip from one of our old shows that we produced a number of months ago, where we basically read the tweets that Nick Wright had to put out there a number of years ago in terms of LeBron James and his ranking all time. Just take a quick listen to that. So let me read what Nick Wright had to say on Twitter back in 2011. He said, on May 27, 2011, in regards to the LBJ versus MJ debate, there is no debate. MJ, greatest player ever. LBJ, not yet in top 10. Could change in a decade, though. Those were Nick Wright's words. Those were his words. So how did all of a sudden in 2016, how did he go from not being in the top 10 or barely being in the top 10? How did he go all the way to number one? And how did Michael Jordan, if you knew in 2011, was the GOAT, how did Jordan drop from number one to number three? None of this, folks, makes any sense whatsoever. So you heard Nick Wright's position. So let me get this straight. At that point, LeBron had no rings. He then goes on to win 3 rings. And then he becomes the greatest player of all time. And then Michael Jordan drops. Why would Jordan drop down three pegs? Why would he do that? Why would he do that? This is the type of people we're dealing with. This is the Nick Wrights of the world. I will never take him seriously. I'm sure we pissed off a lot of people. And I could give a you-know-what. I could give a you-know-what. You know why? Because I have a right to give my opinion. If Nick Wright has the right to go out there and say the crazy stuff that he says in terms of basketball, because I don't watch him for anything else, then I think there should be a provision that allows there to be a counterbalance to the nonsense. Hence, our take on Nick Wright and the takes of so many others that have been calling out this madness.